Hey, this is Landfill from Municipal Waste, Cannabis Corpse, Iron Reagan, Morbikon, Valiant Thor, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, episode 163. And today's guest, we're talking to Phil Hall. Phil Hall is a guitarist and bassist from Richmond, Virginia. He plays with Municipal Waste, Cannabis Corpse, Iron Regan, and probably a plethora of other bands. Today we're going to be talking to him about what got him into metal, as well as doing a rundown of his discography. So without further ado, let's go talk to Phil. So what's up, guys? I am here with Phil Hall from Municipal Waste, Cannabis Corpse, Iron Regan, and the new death metal band, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So how are you doing today, Phil?
I'm all right, man. Just out here enjoying the summertime. I have the basically the next 3 months off from touring, and so I'm just at home relaxing and enjoying it.
Yeah, chilling like a villain. So kind of like the format is I want to do like a quick rundown of your discography as well as talk about like your musical journey, but take me back to young Phil Hall. So kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal that made you want to start playing guitar and slap at a bass?
Well, when I was like 12, 13, the internet wasn't really around full tilt like it is now. So discovering new music and discovering bands was a little bit harder than it is now. So I was kind of at the mercy of what my friends were into. And at the time, everybody was kind of into like pop punk because that was what was popular on the radio. Bands like Offspring and Green Day and stuff. So everybody kind of liked music like that. But I will say that kind of at the same time, my interest in playing guitar was starting to kick in. So it was a good start to playing guitar because those songs are like easier to play. Playing a Green Day riff or something is pretty basic. And so it really helped me get my foot in the door as far as learning how to play. And then later I discovered Cannibal Corpse. My friend brought in a Cannibal Corpse CD to middle school, and that's what really like opened my eyes to extreme metal. It was
Right.
the Bleeding album. And so I've been a Cannibal Corpse fan ever since then. And from Cannibal Corpse, I discovered all the other bands like Morbid Angel and Emperor and all the Tampa classic fathers of death metal. And so from there, it was on, and I was practicing guitar all the time simultaneously as discovering these bands. And I had a buddy that had an older brother that was like into Slayer and Iron Maiden and all this stuff. So I discovered a lot of music through him too.
Awesome. And were you in any other band? What were your like bands like pre like Municipal Waste and Cannabis Corpse and stuff?
Before Municipal Waste, when I was about 20, I joined up with some older guys that I knew from the city in a death metal band called Nehema. And it was kind of techy death metal that was sort of in the same, I guess you could compare it to like Cryptopsy or something. None So Vile era Cryptopsy. And but we were pretty sloppy and we weren't that good, but we were playing gigs and stuff. And when I was 17, I had like a horror punk sort of band that was we wanted to be like the Misfits or something because that's all we had the capability of playing. So it sounded like we wanted to be like Guar, the Misfits. So it kind of we had costumes and shit, but we were playing gigs, and that was kind of like the first gigs I ever played. That band was called Stitcho, and yeah, that's about it before Municipal Waste. But Nehema, the death metal band, played a couple gigs with Municipal Waste, and from there they met me, and I guess when they needed a new bass player about 2004, that's when I joined.
Yeah, and then I know 2005 you did your first album, Hazardous Mutation. So, what was like the thought process going into making this album, being it was your first record with the band?
I didn't. I just was trying to write some cool music, and I was definitely full of excitement and towards the project. So I would just show up with a million riffs, and Ryan would sort of like tell me which riffs he liked, and we would compile songs. But writing that record was really easy and fun, and it just sort of flowed right out, and it came together pretty well. And we they had just signed to Earache Records, and that was the first album for Earache. So the things were starting to move pretty quickly for Municipal Waste, and we could definitely tell that people were starting to take notice of our music, and it was really fun and exciting.
Yeah, I loved this album, and I especially like there's the song "Guilty of Being Tight," which has like that sample from Phantasm. I'm just curious, how'd you end up putting like the sample in that song?
Well, that would be Ryan Joy's idea. He's a huge '80s horror, old school horror guy, so he was the one to decide to put that in there, or it could have been Tony, but I'm pretty sure it was Ryan.
All right. And then I know in going into 2006, you started up Cannabis Corpse. I think it was like you with you and your brother. How did you end up forming Cannabis Corpse?
Well, I'd we'd had the idea for Cannabis Corpse for a while. We thought it was a funny, original kind of idea for a death metal band. And so I had a little extra time in the summer of 2006, and I had bought this little digital 8-track recorder device. And that was what came out, Cannabis Corpse. And we recorded that first album, Blunted at Birth, in Oregon Hill and Richmond. And at the time, I was living with Andy Horn, and we just put this album together, and it was just a fun time. We were just young kids, just taking bong hits and recording death metal music, and I definitely put a lot of effort into writing those songs.
Yeah, I'd love to love this. Like when people like think of Cannabis Corpse, they always think like it's like a parody, and especially with like the song titles like "I Come Bud," "Force Fed," "Shitty Grass," but like the songs itself are actually original. It's just the titles are parodies.
Yeah, that's the idea. We wanted to start a death metal band, uh, uh a '90s style roll. Now they call it OSDM. It seems like right at this moment there's a ton of bands doing this like '90s throwback death metal stuff, but we started our '90s throwback death metal band in 2006. So we were uh,
Yeah.
16 years ahead of the game.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then going to 2007, you went back in the studio with Municipal Waste and you did The Art of Partying, which this is probably like my favorite album of Municipal Waste. And being as it now second album with the band, did you feel like more comfortable on a songwriting level with the guys at the time?
We just kind of continue what we were doing with Hazardous Mutation. Ryan and I would get together, and I would have all these riffs, and we would compile these songs. And it was still, you know, brand new to us, and we were starting to really tour a lot and playing tons of shows. And since we were on the Earache label, we were going out to the UK a lot. It's a UK based label, so and especially during the Art of Partying era, uh, people were really starting to take notice of Municipal Waste, and we were playing really big shows, and the train was just moving, and it was really fun time, and we are all very young and just getting used to the idea of being in a band that people were willing to pay to go see.
Yeah.
So it was again just it was just a rip roaring time. I was a very young man, and just enjoying being in a band and drinking beers and hanging out and doing whatever the fuck we wanted to do. So the art of partying was the perfect snapshot of that moment in our career.
And hence like the album title, it just feels like a very like party kind of like album and just like like the whole vibe behind it is great. And I just like all the songs, like the title track, Headbanger, Face Rip. I just like all the songs that like go under like 2 minutes or less. It's just like no bullshit, just get right to the point.
Yeah, we're very riff oriented, and we want to write catchy songs, and we also have a punk aesthetic to things. So we don't want to write epic 18-minute long songs. We just want to keep slapping people in the face with riffs and fun stuff.
All right. Then flash forward to 2008, you did the second Cannabis Corpse album, Tube of the Resonated. I like this album. So what was that like going from Blunted at Birth to Tube of the Resonated?
Well, we again we were just having fun. We didn't have any sort of pressure on us or anything in any way, and we just were. I was just writing more music at that time in my life. I was very motivated to write music every day. I still kind of do that. Uh, and Two of the Resonated came together uh, pretty easily. And I met with a guy in I live in a town called Mechanicsville in Virginia, and there was a guy down the street that had a studio, and he didn't really have any experience whatsoever with metal. So
Yeah.
the album we just recorded, I was like, this is what we're doing. And he mixed it, and I think because maybe he didn't know a lot about death metal, the mix turned out pretty interesting, and people seem to like that one.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite. I actually just love like the album artwork with like the little bong and like the praising it. Who came up with this artwork? Because it looks fucking awesome.
It's an artist, and I think he lives in Berlin now. His name is Andre Buzikov, and he was very affiliated with the Tank Crimes label.
Yeah, and especially like this
So
one in the
he
booklet
was
looks
living with
awesome.
Scotty at the time. Oh yeah, the artwork on the inside of the booklet is a guy named James Callahan, who goes by the name Barf, and he's a very talented comic book style artist as well.
Yeah, yeah, this looks like something from like an Adult Swim show. Looks pretty trippy, but awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Cannabis Corpse is a fun band. We also took the songwriting very seriously, but the artwork definitely has a sort of tongue in cheek atmosphere, and I've always thought of the artwork from an album to be almost as important as the music. So we strive to make the artwork good.
Yeah. And then 2009, I know you did like both things for both Cannabis and Municipal. I know you did also first thing is Massive Aggressive. I like that this album. So what was that like going from this to this?
From uh, from what to what? Sorry,
Yeah, from
going from
Art
Two
of
for the Resonated
Partying.
to Massive Aggressive.
No, yeah, or just from no, yeah,
Oh,
just
to Massive Aggressive.
yeah, yeah, from this to this. This came out after this.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm using my phone at the moment, so the screen's pretty small, so I have trouble seeing things when you hold them up to the cameras.
So
But
it's all good. My bad.
let's see. Yeah, Massive Aggressive was, again, we were very busy with touring at that point in our career. Things were getting really busy, and we were just touring relentlessly and playing tons and tons of shows, and so with some time off, we wrote some more riffs and put that one together. And with that album, we went with a different studio, and it was a unique experience. It was such a whirlwind at that time that I almost don't have a whole lot of memories of the Massive Aggressive album. Uh, that one just seemed to fly by. We were so busy. Things at that moment were just crazy. I was touring with Cannabis Corpse as well,
Yeah,
and just trying to stay as relentlessly busy as I possibly could. And
yeah,
so things became almost a blur at that moment.
yeah. And I know next year is going to be the 15-year anniversary of Massive Aggressive. Is there like any chance to get a celebration of this somehow? Maybe do a tour replay start to finish?
Sometimes we think of doing things like that, but it's really a matter of uh, the it. If somebody wants us to do it, we'll do it. But we haven't had any discussion of doing something like that.
Yeah, but I also forgot that this year is also 15 years of Tuba the Resonated. I would love, which is another great album.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, check. Sorry, do you have any? I think we're having a little technical
Go ahead. You're
issues.
good.
All right, there we go. Because I forgot to also mention that this year is also 15 years of Tuba the Resonated. It would be cool if you did a celebration of this. It's like my favorite Cannabis Corpse album.
Oh yeah, I mean it's hard to believe that 15 years have gone by since Tuba resonated. At the moment I'm pretty busy with other projects. I've kind of I've put Cannabis Corpse a little bit on the back burner to focus on other things for a little while, and maybe in the future we'll get Cannabis Corpse back together and play some more shows. But at the moment, I'm focused on municipal waste and my new project, Morbikon.
Yeah. But I know that we now in also 2009, the same year of the Mass Aggressive, you also did the Weeding EP from Cannabis Corpse. I'm always curious about like an EP because anytime when a band does an EP, I always consider it kind of like a video game reference, like a side quest or like a sneak preview of what's to come. Was that like something to hold fans over before you did Beneath Grow Light Shall Not Thou Shalt Rise?
The Weeding EP, we like I said before, I was so busy that the Weeding EP was just me trying to keep things moving forward with the limited time that I had. So we wrote these 4 songs and put it together quickly so we could put out a release shortly after Tuba the Resonated, as and keep the ball rolling. It's important sometimes to stay active and keep momentum when you have a new band like that.
Yeah, and because I noticed between like Cannabis and Municipal, it's like pretty much going back and forth. Like as you do that, I feel like it's just like goes back. You're just doing it like equal. Do Cannabis, Municipal, Cannabis. It kind of like goes back and forth.
Yeah, at the time it was very much that. I would do a tour with Municipal Waste, and then I'd fill in the space between tours with a Cannabis Corpse tour. So I was just relentless. I was on the road months at a time.
Yeah, and then next up is Beneath Grow Lights Thou Shall Rise. It's like a tongue twister in itself. So tell me about like making this album.
Beneath Grow Lights, we went with the same guy that had done Tuber the Resonated, and yeah, I just wrote a bunch of songs, and I tried very hard to write catchy, fun death metal that was listenable, and we put a lot of effort into that album, and we had it mixed by Eric Rutan down there in Florida, and the it turned out pretty good. I thought uh, we we definitely spent a little more money on that album to try to increase the quality,
Yeah,
and people seem to like it.
yeah. And then going into 2012, you did with Municipal Waste, The Fatal Waste in Space. This was actually the album that got me into you guys. So, oh, and hard to believe, last year was, of course, 10 years of this album. So, how do you feel about this album now, like a little over a decade later?
That was the first album that we started working with Nuclear Blast, and they definitely rolled out the red carpet for us, and we made some really outrageous music videos, and we and working with a new label, it was just felt like fresh and new and fun, and I remember them doing a lot to help promote that record, and yeah, we had fun flying out to California and shooting music videos that were like in in like sound stages and put together by people that really knew what they were doing, and yeah, the Fatal Feast was a good time.
Yeah. And then also around that time, 2012, you joined Iron Regan, which of course has you and Tony. How'd you end up starting up Iron Regan?
We Tony and I, I got into a practice space with Ryan Parrish, who was the former drummer for Darkest Hour, and we wrote like 20 songs in one practice session, and just cranked it out real quick. Just seeing what would happen if we did it that way, and a lot of those songs became what was on Worse Than Dead. For me, it was something to just have as much energy and punk energy in the music as we could, and it was just a fun little project. But then we started to get some pretty good opportunities after the release of that first record, so we started to tour with that as well. So my life became touring with three bands full time: Cannabis Corpse, Municipal Waste, and Iron Reagan. So there were years where I would play 300 shows a year, and I was driving and just really working hard.
Yeah, and I hard to believe that this year is also 10 years of the first Iron Reagan album, Worse Than Dead. So, like, I know there's like a lot of album anniversaries I was gonna be talking about, but like, tell me about like the making of the first Iron Reagan album. Now here we are 10 years later.
Well, at the time, I was getting into producing myself. Like I was getting into recording technology, and I'd learned how to use Pro Tools and things like that. So I actually produced the first Iron Reagan record, full length record myself, and that was my very first project ever on using Pro Tools. So and I got my friend Rob Caldwell to mix it, uh, and he and I think it turned out pretty well considering that it was my first ever project uh, producing myself.
Yeah, yeah, it still sounds really great like a decade later.
Thank you.
Right. And then 2014, I know it was also busy year because first thing I like to talk about is From Wisdom to Baked, the next Cannabis Corpse album. I love this album. I know next year is also going to be 10 years of this album. So how do you feel? What was like the thought process and the mindset going into making From Wisdom to Baked?
From Wisdom to Baked was the first Cannabis Corpse record where I took over full time vocal duties, and that was another record where I produced it myself because things with the Iron Reagan record went well. So I decided to just do the entire production myself. And I remember living in this little river house, and I was just sitting in that little river house writing riffs and recording my own vocals, and I put a lot of effort into it and work, and it's hard to believe how much time has gone by since even that record came out.
Yeah, yeah, and being as it was like your first record, like doing the vocals, were you kind of like nervous, like taking over lead vocals?
No, I don't know. You know, it's not like I feel nervous about anything. I just go into it and just trying to make myself happy. I feel
Right.
like as long as I'm satisfied with what it is, maybe other people out there will be satisfied with what it is as well.
Yeah, and when it comes to, like playing like the songs live, especially with like the older Cannabis Corpse songs, songs with you singing, was it hard to like sing and play the bass at the same time? Did you like when it comes to like the writing of the songs? Do you ever just like practice and figure out where the vocals lie, where your hands are on the fret, like do 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 do?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, you got to practice all the time. I like practicing, so if I'm not driving to the next show, I usually have a guitar in my hands and I'm practicing. As far as those old songs, I'd heard them so many times. I kind of knew all the words and stuff anyway. So it was pretty easy a transition. Although I will say, uh, performing vocals is definitely hard work. It's a much more physical thing, and you're in charge of, bullshitting with the audience between songs and stuff. So I kind of had to come out of my shell a little bit and just get out there and get a little wilder and crazier and be entertaining for as a lead singer.
Yeah, because I know your vocals on there, they just sound like freaking brutal. Well, not to discourage the other vocalists, but you just sound like really just powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, death metal vocals is a peculiar art form, but since I'm producing the records myself, I could sit there and perform the vocals exactly the way I wanted them, and I wasn't at the mercy of any sort of producer, so I could just take my time and get the performance exactly what I wanted.
All right. And then also 2014, but going back to Iron Reagan, I know you did like the Spoiled Identity EP and the second full length, The Tyranny of Will, which is a quick turnaround round because it came out like literally like a year after Worse Than Dead. Did you like started writing that material right after Worse Than Dead came out?
Yeah, basically. And with that band, we we were touring a lot. I mean, keep in mind, as all these records are coming out, I'm also touring full time. So I was spending my entire days just working on whatever I needed to work on at that moment. And Iron Reagan, our songwriting process, we tried to expedite and go with the first thoughts that went to our head and not try to overthink things, because it's a lot of times the best idea that you have is the first one that comes to you. So I just tried to go with instinct with those songs, and just and it came together pretty well. I like that album.
Yeah, it's still great. And then I know you also do some session work as well because in 2015 you did Crypt of the Devil with 6 Feet Under. I know you handled some guitars and bass tracks along with like your brother and Brandon Ellis playing with Black Dahlia Murder. So how'd you end up playing on the album?
Well, we toured with 6 Feet Under. Cannabis Corpse did a tour with 6 Feet Under, and me and Barnesy Boy kind of had a relationship a little bit, and I had some Cannabis Corpse demos that I hadn't really used for anything, so I sent them to Barnes, asking maybe he wanted to sing on them, because he sang on a track on that Beneath Grow Lights, or not, or From Wisdom to Baked, and he was like, "Yeah, but I like these songs. Can I use them as 6 Feet Under?" And I was like, "Man, I'll write the whole record for you." So I just, that was an exciting opportunity because I like Barnes. People always throw shade at Barnes, but the dude is a legend. So I cranked out a bunch of death metal songs for him, and he put his vocals on it, and he put it out as a 6 Feet Under record. So it was basically the same exact process I was using to produce Cannabis Corpse records. I just did it, and and Barnes put on vocals, and it became 6 Feet Under.
All right. And then, of course, the last Iron Reagan album, Crossover Ministry. I think that was a pretty good album. Tell me about like making that album.
Crossover Ministry, Iron Reagan was touring a lot, and we were starting to get pretty good opportunities. And Crossover Ministry, we took the time between tours to make some more music, and at this point it was I'd been making so many albums and doing so many things that making another album, it was becoming a little bit easier and easier. I was learning things from each record, what to do and what not to do. So by the time Crossover Ministry happened, I definitely kind of knew what time it was, and we made it happen, and just in time to get back on the road.
Yeah. And then that same year, you did the last Musical Waste album, Slime and Punishment. I loved this album. Tell me about like making that because now you have a second guitarist in the band. So did that change up like the songwriting dynamics at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, sure. Nick definitely contributes riffs, and so does Ryan, and so all three of us contribute riffs, and that album I produced myself exactly the same way as I made the Cannabis Corpse records and Iron Reagan records, and so we just did it at home and in the practice space and set up the microphones and just pressed record and tried to make it sound as close to what the band sounded like as possible,
Yeah,
and back on the road.
yeah, because I remember first seeing Municipal Waste on this album cycle. You did the 2017 Warp tour, and that was the first time ever seeing Municipal Waste. And ever since then, I've seen you like a bunch. I can't even remember how many times, like six, seven now.
What town are you in?
And I'm in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is like 35 minutes north of Atlanta.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, we go through Atlanta a lot. Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, and Warp Tour was a trip. I mean, what a wild tour. It was like 40 some shows, or I think, and it was incredibly hot every day. You'd be out there in the heat, in the traveling through Arizona and Vegas in the summertime. It was hot, hot, hot.
yeah.
But we all enjoyed ourselves, and yeah, it was a fun time.
Yeah, but I even remembered that the Atlanta date. I was like, I remember there was like it was like a little bit cloudy, but then I remember during a while it just like there was like torrential downpour that some bands had to delay or even cancel some of their set times because of that.
Yeah, occasionally there would be weather. Occasionally there would be some crazy storm that would blow through. But you know, it's not their first rodeo, so they knew how to batten down the hatches and just wait it out, and the
Yeah,
show would go on.
yeah. And then of course you did the Left Hand Pass from Cannabis Corpse in September of 2017. Saying I love that album. Tell me about like making that.
With that album, I gave the reins to my buddy Ray, who was playing guitar for the band at the time, and I'd written some demos, but and we had recorded the drums, and we just gave the drums to Ray and said, "Hey, go crazy," and he tracked all the guitars himself. So that record definitely has a different sort of vibe from other Cannabis Corpse records because he was doing the majority of the guitar playing instead of myself, and uh, and that one definitely is a very unique album in the Cannabis Corpse discography.
Yeah, and then I know going into 2018, you did the last like thing with the Iron Reagan, the Dark Days at the Head EP. Can you tell me about like that because that's just like a freaking just in your face all throughout.
I think those were some songs that we had left over from the crossover ministry recording session. So we just made a little EP out of it
Yeah,
and put it out on the label that I think those Turnstile dudes run.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember what the label's called, but
yeah. But yeah, have you all started like ideas
and
for
those Turnstile dudes.
you're saying
Ideas for what? The
ideas
next
for
Iron Reagan record?
yeah,
Well, you know, right now we're focused majorly on Municipal Waste. We've done a whole lot of we played a lot of cool shows this year with Municipal Waste. And are you still there? Can you hear me?
yeah. I'm here. Check check.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So we've been focused on Municipal Waste for the time being.
All right, and then the last Cannabis Corpse album, 2019, Nug So Vile, really great album. I just love like the trees and the stuff. I think I love all the Cannabis Corpse artwork is just really great. Just like but musically, tell me about like making this album.
That album was, uh, I like I said, the album before that, Ray Sui had done the guitars. So this album, I took the guitars back over, and also we had our buddy Adam writing some. He wrote about 3 songs on the album. We like to try to keep things fresh and do what we can to keep it from getting stale or anything. And and I like that. I like that album. I think it turned out pretty good. I just made it in my home studio at home and just took my time and crafted it the way I wanted it.
Yeah, and then I know you also did the last Rager EP from Municipal Waste that year. Here, when it comes to like playing with all these bands, how different of like a mind frame is it depending on like the project, or is there like a usually game plan that pretty much applies to like everything that you do?
The game plan is try to write music that people want to listen to and that we like, and it's been 20 years of doing this, so I know everyone involved very well. So going into each project, I sort of know what to expect and how to work with people, and we just try to make the process as easy as we can, and we don't try to battle each other on things, and I just trust the other guys' opinions, because obviously their opinions are valid because we've been able to get to this point in our career. So I don't fight anyone on anything, and I just try to be a useful cog in the wheel,
All right.
and I just want to keep it going.
All right, and then of course the new album, Electrified Brain, definitely one of my favorite albums from last year. But I feel like the new album features more of the great Municipal Waste kind of anthems. Were you trying to like achieve that with that album?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Tony for what he comes up with vocally. He's got great ideas, and he has a very good ear for catchy vocal patterns and big choruses, and yeah, he definitely achieved a lot of really cool big stuff in that. And we also went with a new producer on that album, and yeah, it came together very well. And the artwork looks great too.
Yeah. Yeah, was there like anything different that you wanted to experiment either with the tones or the dynamic or the tempos that you haven't tried before?
Uh, well, we never had a discussion about anything like that. We just go in to every album with a batch of songs that we think are good, and we try to just keep it ripping and not try to bog it down with too much stuff or too many technical changes. And we keep it very straightforward and aggressive.
Yeah, and there's also like a lot of thick grooves and some great chugging riffs. I feel like it seems like you're more focused on creating for the song and the song structures as a whole.
It's very important to look at the big picture and not get bogged down with the minutia of things. Sometimes it can happen, like when I was writing death metal. Sometimes I would get way too preoccupied with creating technical changes in every little sort of split second of music, and all that stuff sort of flies by and maybe doesn't even register with the listener. It's better to take a step back and look at the big picture and try to craft songs as a whole, like you said.
Uh, yeah, and of course you mentioned what you work with a different producer. How different is it like working with like a producer versus like producing yourself?
It's a lot easier, a lot less pressure. uh, I I like it. I all I had to do was show up and play bass. It was nice.
Right. And then I know around 2019, it's the last Rager. I think you were starting to write for the new album, but I know it was originally was going to be released for mid 2020. But of course, the certain virus that I refused to name sort of fucked it all up. But did like the being in like the quarantine and the isolation all and pretty much allow you to like hone in your craft and work on like the songs a lot more?
Well, what I did during the pandemic is create a new band called Morbikon. It's a black metal band that I did with Dave Whitty from Municipal Waste, and uh, and I also, on the record, the vocals are handled by Matthias Lilmans, who sings for Fintroll. And also, I learned how to animate cartoons during the pandemic. So I created two full length music videos for Morbicon that you can watch right now on YouTube. Um, One's for Universal Funeral, and one is for uh, Phantom Vessel. And if you want to see my artwork and my animation, I highly recommend you go on YouTube right now and search Morbikon and check it out. I put a lot of work into that. And also during the pandemic, I did a ZZ Top cover band with Ryan and Dave. We learned an hour's worth of ZZ Top tunes, and I sang and played guitar. I was Billy Gibbons for one show,
Yeah.
and then also I just started doing a Slayer cover band with my friends in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The drummer is this guy Gus Rios, who plays in Gruesome and Malevolent Creation.
Yeah.
So that band's going to be pretty cool too. I'm handling vocals and bass.
Yeah.
And Morbicon has our first show booked at Full Terror Assault in September, as well as Decibel Metal and Beer Fest in Denver. So come check out those shows if you're interested in seeing me and Dave Whitty play some black metal.
Awesome. And of course, still talking about the latest Voice album, I just think you really sound tight as hell on the album. What is sort of like the musical chemistry between all you guys, especially once you get on the stage?
I can trust those guys to deliver the goods. I never have to worry about anybody fucking up. So I just try to handle the bass duties as well as I can, and I can trust everyone else. Every Tony's a pro, Ryan's a pro, Nick's a pro, Dave's a pro. So I just I can relax and have fun playing and enjoy myself.
Yeah, and I especially love the song "Putting on Errors" featuring Barney from Napalm Death. How'd you end up getting him to guest on there?
Tony Foresta hit him up. We've toured with Napalm Death a couple times with Iron Reagan and Municipal Waste. So Barney's a friend of Tony's, so Tony hit him up and got him on the track, which that's a track that I wrote myself. So it was fun to hear Barney put his vocals on it.
Yeah. And then I also, of course, now I want to talk about like the Morbicon with Of Mournful Twilight. Like I had listened to this in preparation for this interview, and it just sounds really fucking awesome. Like, tell me about like making that album because it came out. It's only been out since last October, but it's still definitely. I would put it up there with like one of my favorite albums of last year.
Thank you. Yeah, it was something that I worked on during the pandemic. I found myself with a lot of time on my hands, and my buddy on Facebook, Quotidius, as he's credited on the album, he put out a message, "Hey, anybody want to make some black metal?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And we started working on songs, and then we started to notice that the songs were pretty cool, and so we put together these 8 songs and put together the and recorded the record, and it took a couple years for us to sort of finish it, and then Tank Crimes put it out, and along with the cartoon music videos that I created, and I'm really pleased with how it's coming about. It came out, and now we've got the live band together. We had our first full band practice this week, and it sounded terrific. We got 2 great guitar players, and so I'm really looking forward to playing with that band live and bringing it out there to the fans.
Awesome, and kind of also want to talk about like your songwriting. Like, do you ever is there like a different like attachment or emotion like between playing guitar versus like playing bass? This bass, despite being just like 2 less strings or anything.
Well, I sort of it's when I get asked that question, it's hard to explain. I approach music in general in a certain way, and playing guitar is one thing, and playing bass is another. But bass, you got to focus on what the drums are doing and try to accent the drums, and not look at it as another guitar. Sometimes, and when I first started playing bass, I sort of had a habit of trying to play everything that the guitar was doing. Whereas now that I've learned all these Slayer songs, I've definitely taken notice on how simplistic the bass parts are, and it really helps the music. The bass player has to know when to hang back and not try to step on everything,
Yeah,
and I think that's a very important mindset to have.
yeah, because I've heard.
Whereas the
So,
guitar is like uh, the guitar is icing on the cake, where the bass guitar and the drums are the cake.
Yeah, yeah, because I know you've heard like all the bass player jokes and memes and stuff, but hey, look at Lemmy and Pierce. They get more ladies than any other buddy.
Well, I think that had more to do with personality than instrument, but uh, hey, if you got enough personality, you could be a garbage man and get laid.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just love like your bass playing because I know you don't focus on flashy bass playing, but I feel like you, like I said, you sort of link with what the drums are doing with the rhythm, and also with what the guitars are doing with sort of the melody, but in a way that's very creative.
Yeah, I enjoy crafting bass parts. I really feel like putting the bass on an album is like when it really starts to sound like music and come together. And bass is really a fun. There's so many different fun things you can do with bass lines to accent the music, and I enjoy it. It's a fun challenge.
All right. And kind of the final thing question I want to ask you is talking about like your gear, like because I'm always curious like what kind of like guitars or basses that you play, and like the strings and pedals and amps and all that good stuff.
Okay, well, for the majority of my career, I played a Fender jazz bass, but just recently I started playing this Gibson Explorer bass from the '80s, and I run it through a Boss compressor, and I also have an overdrive pedal as well as a Sans amp and a tuner pedal, and I also have a wireless receiver, so I can rock a wireless on stage. And I blend. I use a lot of distortion from the overdrive and not a whole lot of distortion on the Sans amp pedal, and I just try to keep it generally pretty mid-rangey and trebly, and then boost the bass on the amp and stuff as needed, and let the sound guy boost bass as needed, and not try to send way too much bass through the line. And that's my theory with bass.
Awesome. And sort of kind of like in the end to wrap things up, what's next for Municipal Waste? Have you all got any more tours lined up, or or starting to write for the next album? And with Morbikon, is there any chance you could like do like any tours and stuff if you're allowed to say?
Yeah, like I said, Morbicon has a show at Full Terror Assault in Cave in Rock, Illinois in September, as well as a show at Decibel Metal and Beer Fest in Denver in December. And and Municipal Waste has another UK tour in October with Gel and Undeath, I believe. And we have a tour booked next year, but I don't think we've revealed that one yet. And we're just going to keep the ball rolling. I think we're going to try to put together an EP or something maybe this year. We'll see.
Do
And I'm just I'm finally just enjoying a little time off. I've been for for a good 17 years. I was working as hard as I possibly could. So these days, I generally try to take a little time for myself and relax a little bit. But I'm still working all the time and creating riffs, and I've been playing in Valiant Thor as well live. I did a couple tours with that band Valiant Thor, and I think I might create some new music for them as well, and just stay busy.
yeah. Awesome. So thank you, Phil, for this interview. Is just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close us out?
Go on YouTube and check out the Morbicon video, and leave a comment, subscribe to Tank Crimes, uh, and just say what's up. And thank you for watching.
Awesome. So everybody, buddy, Phil Hall from Municipal Waste, Cannabis Corpse, Iron Regan, and Morbicon. We'll see you next time.